Welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee. This Wednesday the 20th of July, I am Councillor Tony Gillius, the Chairman of this committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'm obliged to read out the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask you to make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out of the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldicott Park. An officer of the Council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building. Moving on to the first item of business, and that is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of June 2022. Can I have a proposer, please? And a seconder? And all those in favour? Excellent. Thank you. Next item is to confirm the... do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair. Just one apology from Councillor Slinger and Councillor Mystery is his substitute for this evening.
Welcome. Declarations of interest. First, non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Councillor Lewis. Could I just ask you to say that again with your microphone on?
Yeah, it's item 3, reference R220301, due to the site being within the ward I represent.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. High Street, Sheep Street are within the ward I represent.
Thank you for that. B, pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Oh, we've got another one over here. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's item 4, the Cricket Club in Webb Ellis Road. That's in my division. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Pecuniary interests as defined by the Code of Conduct for Councillors. Have we got any? No, we're all okay. We're all legal. And then number C, section under 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. And we're all up to speed. That's brilliant. We'll now move on to applications for consideration. And what we're going to be doing, because we've got speakers on item 2, we're going to move that to item 1 on applications for consideration. And before we do that, we'll just read out the regulations regarding the order of speaking. First, the planning officer will speak and present the application. The representatives for the objectors, the applicants and then the ward councillor will each be invited to speak. After each speaker, committee members will be asked if they have any points of clarification from the speaker. Any ward member or councillor who speaks on the application as part of the application's speaking process shall leave the meeting once all the speakers have completed their presentations relating to it. Members of the committee will then go into debate on the application, asking relevant questions of the planning officer if necessary. A formal recommendation will then be made and voted upon. Rules for public speaking. Speakers will have 3 minutes to make their representation. They will be warned by a short alarm when they have 30 seconds left, and then a further alarm will sound when their time has expired. Their presentation should then be brought to a halt. No extra time will be allowed. All speakers should direct their representations to amplifying the planning matters they have previously put to for the benefit of the planning committee. Speakers should restrict their comments to material planning considerations only. Any non-planning issues will be disregarded. Speakers should not introduce any additional information that has not been previously brought to the planning authority's attention, i.e. introduce late items that have not been suitably considered by officers and properly addressed in the officer's report to Planning Committee for the members' deliberation. No visual aids or handouts may be used, and no questions to officers or members will be allowed. No members of the public are allowed to take part in the debate once their presentation has been given. So, we'll now move on to Ruth, who's got a presentation. This is 1 Avro House, Bath Street. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Could you...
the majority of shared accommodation is of a below standard quality, especially in comparison to places such as Coventry and Birmingham. Many of the professionals who live in my properties expressed their desire to leave Rugby as they struggled to find a quality shared home until they found mine. We take great pride in everything we do, which I hope you've seen when you reviewed the photos of our previous properties which were provided to you in the portal. We manage the properties ourselves within our own lettings agency and have a strict application process. We only rent homes to working professionals who on average earn more than £28,000 per year and are aged 25 and above. Although our rooms could have couples in, we have a strict... Can you hear me there? Oh, sorry. I've not done this before. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, sorry. That's better for my back. I was like, okay, so we only rent homes to working professionals who on average earn more than £28,000 per year and are aged 25 and above. Although HMO guidelines allow our larger rooms to house couples, we as a company have a strict policy where no couples are allowed purely because we feel it doesn't really suit the dynamic of our single-person professional households. Our current tenants include local professions such as a dental nurse, chef, architect, designer, marketing executive and a logistics manager, to name a few. We have 100% occupancy in all of our properties, and we even have a waiting list of professionals wanting to move into our next available room. After reading all of the objections, the main issue highlighted was parking. Firstly, over 98% of our professional tenants do not own cars. They work in the town centre or use public transport and therefore do not require parking. As a responsible company who take pride in our properties, we promote green living and provide bike racks at all of our properties, and we also go the extra mile and offer various tenant incentives such as free vouchers towards biking accessories. Please bear in mind that the building was previously an office which provided parking for more than 12 members of staff. If it remained an office, parking would continue to be offered. We would, in fact, therefore, be reducing the existing parking issue as we do not need any parking permits and would therefore not be contributing to any parking issues. Our proposed solution would be for us to be allocated either a reduced number of parking permits, or if that was an issue, we would be more than happy to accept a condition to have no parking permits, which resolves the issue completely. With regards to bins, I would like to highlight that we've never received a single complaint about any of our properties, especially nothing to do with rubbish or antisocial behaviour. Our professional tenants are far too busy working full-time to be hanging around outside the front of the building dropping rubbish. Following recommendations from the planning team, we revisited our plans and have provided a substantially larger outdoor space. To clarify, all bins will be stored on our private property within the garden, away from the road, and will only be taken out of the front on bin day.
You're done.
We're a small family business. We're passionate about quality educated professionals in rugby.
All right. I'll give you an extra 10 seconds there, so, you know. Have we got any points of clarification from the members? No? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Okay, first of all to Ruth, is that the order I can do it? Ruth, thank you very much. Really full. Oh, just for the speaker. Oh, for goodness sake, Barbara. Wouldn't think I'd done this before, would you? Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. And I did look very carefully at the report and the images you gave of the properties you've already developed, and they're very impressive.
Thank you.
And I don't think it matters that. To me, it doesn't matter that it's professionals.
Councillor Brown, could you just move your microphone around so that we can hear what you're saying?
No, that's just Tony overrode it.
Just move your microphone round towards you. That's better. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, back to what I was saying. It doesn't matter to me really that they're all professionals. They could be anybody because they're people who need houses, aren't they? And my questions are based around your calculation of who actually needs parking spaces there. Okay, so counting quickly, I see there is room for 17 residents there. Am I right? I heard you say you don't let to couples, you don't let two people in a double room.
Yeah, that's right. So as a company, because we're targeting single professionals, as a rule, we just don't house any couples at all in our HMOs. We also provide fully furnished, all-inclusive apartments. So if we do get applicants for couples, they go into our apartments. All of our tenants, none of them have ever really needed parking, which is why I said we'd be more than happy to agree a condition where we had no parking permits for the whole property, because they all either commute into London or they work in rugby, whatever they do for their profession. I think probably out of 50 tenants, I've probably only know one that has a car parking permit.
Thanks. And can I just check that, just to tie it in with what was said from the officer, is that what's guided the 3 parking permit suggestion, do you think?
I guess so. I think that's just come from Highways as their recommendation. I think typically, because we're dealing with a town centre HMO, typically these people, they don't need cars. They don't, because they walk, they ride their bikes, they get the public transport. So I think Highways have perhaps looked at the existing parking issues of that area and recommended that a maximum of 3, which is absolutely fine with me. We'd be happy to accept them. But on the other hand, I also know our tenants, and I know that even if we couldn't have them, we would be happy to accept that as well.
So in your view, there's absolutely no impact?
We don't need parking for who we target our rooms to, no.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got, I think, Councillor Lewis, did you want to ask him?
Yeah, just a question. Looking at the plans, there's a communal kitchen on the ground floor where there's cooking facilities, but there doesn't seem to be any cooking facilities anywhere else on the first floor or on the ground floor. Is that right?
Yeah, so the plans are just a representation, so they're not as detailed into everything that's provided. Firstly, as per the HMO guidelines, as a rule, we have to provide 2 double ovens within the communal kitchen. However, the larger of the rooms that you see will actually have their own self-contained kitchenette, which includes an electric hob, a microwave oven, their own fridge. So 6 of those rooms are actually completely self-contained and they have their own kitchen space. And we actually find that the people that live in the studios don't actually use the communal areas and kitchens anyway, because they're very self-contained. But to ensure that we provide over and above what we're supposed to based on the HMO guidelines, we ensure that we provide those anyway, just in case they wanted to use those facilities as well. So we've overcompensated for what people would need.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor Tim Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. Of the stylish living portfolio, and that includes associated companies, are there any outstanding antisocial behaviour incidents?
Not one.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say, I think we, as part of the brand that I'm building, we actually have our own lettings agency. I think I touched on it briefly. So what my team do is we have a very strict sort of application process. We speak to employers. It was interesting, the point about the logistics company, because we have a lot of managers that come from the Magna Parks developments that come and live in our homes. So we are very strict, mainly because we want the houses to be very harmonious. And also it saves us a lot of headache later down the line. So we are quite strict with who we have in our properties. Thanks.
Okay, no further points of colour. Councillor Ishmistry.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of issues I've got. The officer just talked about we needed 1 2-bedroom property for logistic and, working out of town. And here I hear this new word, professional people working in the people that you want to do. So there is a bit of a contradiction that I hear. My question is that area is a part of it, from Clifton Road to one side of the William Street, is commercial properties. All of them were commercial, bigger. And back
Councillor Mystery, is this a question about a point of clarification of what the Speaker has said?
Thank you, Chair. It's a commercial area, and it will have the consideration that when you say there won't be any car, there's no guarantee that you write into your tenancy that they won't be allowed to have a car. When you look at the green space, there's hardly any room to put the, 11 or 12 bicycle stand. So how are you going to address that? Because if there is no leisure facility within that compound, because you've used it up for the building, where are they going to smoke and do their other pleasures?
Yeah, so firstly, the area is residential, both to the left, right and opposite the building. It's all residential properties. Secondly, as you'll see on the plans, there's a large garden that completely gives us more than enough outside amenity space for the 11 tenants. Bikes rack space, we actually have the ones that go up on top of the wall, and then we also have individual ones on the floor. So we've never had an issue whereby we haven't got enough bike racks, and if we did, we would look at a solution to find more, but we always overcompensate for them. And then also with regards to, I think you said something about the logistics side of it, Magna Park, the only residential areas for people coming to work in the ever-growing Magna Park development is Rugby. Those people are highly skilled, working at some of the best companies in the world, including Amazon, H&M and various other providers. And, you know, these people do need very quality homes. We get a lot of people moving in on 6-month contracts, 12-month contracts, and then they recommend us to their employers and stuff as well. So we know that there's a demand there. We've got a big waiting list of people at the moment waiting for our homes. And yeah, I think what we're doing, and the HMO officer for Rugby has often said that he's never seen properties quite like ours, and they are.
Okay, thanks. I think you've made the point quite adequately there. We've got a couple more speakers, councillors. We've got Councillor Ismishri.
Thank you, Chair. My question is only if there is some complaint about the services, or any complaint about antisocial behavior, how this will be managed and what kind of response time will we have?
Of course. The beauty of actually managing the properties ourselves in-house, the reason we actually started the agency a year and a half ago was because we felt that the local estate agents that were previously managing the properties weren't responding quick enough. We now have everything trapped on the app. The tenants have their own app where they can log any issues from maintenance to issues with tenants, and I have an around-the-clock team who respond to those, and also after 7 o'clock, calls personally are diverted to my mobile should there be a major issue.
Just one more speaker, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you.
Definitely a point of clarification.
It is, Chair. Basically said you have a number of people who are working within the logistics and catering industries. Does that mean they need flexible hours in terms of access and egress from the property?
We've not ever asked people their exact times and schedules. Pretty much everybody works full time. If somebody started work at 6 a.m, then, you know, they're not disrupting the house. When we build our properties, all of the rooms are like double boarded, so they all are quite soundproof. And to be honest, we've never had any issues with that. So I don't know exactly the timescales that every single person works, but I can certainly guarantee that we've never had any issues of people coming in and out at different times. Everyone works full time, keeps themselves to themselves, and yeah, they just look after the property and are quite pleasant when they see each other.
Thanks for the speaker. And now we've got another speaker. It's Councillor Harrington. And Councillor Harrington, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And fellow councillors. I've been around the ward. I've spoken to people on Bath Street and William Street, and parking is the main issue, one of the main issues. They might be saying they're all professionals and they won't have cars or things like that. But you think about people coming to visit and things like that. If you've got up to 17 occupants in there, where they're going to park. Also, you've got the Lawrence Sheriff School there as well, so you've got the problem with parking with the school hours and things like that. Also, if you go down William Street, basically on the left-hand side is all double yellow lines, and basically they're all in shops there, so they've got nowhere to park. Now, just for a bit of information, Co-op have been very friendly to the residents and say, look, I know there's not enough parking spaces there. They've given their spaces away for free to help out to alleviate the issue. I know on the report it says free permits plus a visitor permit. For me, working with concerned Rugbytarians against parking proposals, this has been abused in the past, and also it's gone against residents and people who actually can't park where they actually live. Also as well, when the letters went out, it didn't go to everyone in the area, so the people wasn't engaged with it. And also, when I went around knocking the doors, they were saying I had a copy of a letter to give it to them to say, actually, this is what's going on. So I think the problem is we haven't had the engagement with the actual residents who's going to be affected by this. So I've spoken, as I said, I've spoken to my facilities. That is the biggest issue. Bins as well, and also the unknown. And I think the problem is no concerns have been properly looked into, and no one's really spoke to the people of the ward. And I think that's a problem we've got in Ben. We've got so many HMOs, so many different people there. At the moment, it's just changing the demographic of the area. And personally, I think there's too many. I mean, there's some great ideas, as the speaker said today, but I think at the moment, it's not managed as it should be. And the residents are really against it at the moment. And I think there should be some sort of communication with them. And that's the reason I've called it in today. But the facilities are not there. And also as well, if people want to go, it may be professionals that go use a train, or they may want to use the buses or things like that. But they might want to go away somewhere at the weekend in a car and things like that. So I just don't see it at the moment. It doesn't make any sense. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Do we have any points of clarification from members of the Planning Committee? Nope. Well, before we go into debate, we'll ask Councillor Harrington to leave the chamber. Before we go into debate, we're going to have a point of clarification from Sarah, Legal.
Thank you, Chair. Just for members' benefit, we've heard a lot this evening about the identity of the occupiers of the property and the applicant's company. Just a gentle reminder that the identity of the applicant and the occupiers is not a material planning consideration. Just to bear in mind, this is granting a planning permission for the use of the property in perpetuity. So it could change hands, and different occupiers could end up occupying that property, or a different applicant could end up, different owner could end up owning that property. So not to take that into consideration as a material planning consideration, please.
Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Chair. Question for the officer. We have in front of us an application and a report recommending approval. But again, and not for the first time in this chamber, we're looking at HMOs being aligned with housing policies rather than their own separate policy. And I do wonder when we're going to see something in place that will be clear in terms of what isn't expected from an HMO application. Once again, we've had the issues of parking, antisocial behaviour, noise, the speculative elements of an application raised. And I do wonder when we can have something in place that actually we can discount the speculation and focus on the actual facts that we have in front of us. May not be necessarily just applicable to this application in front of us, but this and others going forward, because we are seeing a lot of applications coming forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Officer Nicholas Smith to respond.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies, I'm going to talk this way for the microphone. I'm not being rude. You raised a number of issues there, Councillor Willis. I think the starting point is that HMOs are a type of residential accommodation. They are either classed as C4 in the used class order or sui generis, but they are a residential type of development. Now, you are quite correct. In the council's local plan that the council adopted, there is no specific policies on HMOs. There is no reference to HMOs in the housing policies. Now, that means that we are unable to introduce supplementary planning guidance to deal with HMOs, and that was set out at the Planning Services Working Party back in February of this year. The suggestion and the recommendations that were agreed by the Planning Services Working Party were that in the next local plan, that there should be specific policies on HMOs which will deal with the concentration and proliferation and give the council some element of control over their locations to ensure that some areas don't become overrun with HMOs. Your next question is probably going to be, when are we going to get that policy in the local plan? As members may or may not be aware, the plan was adopted in July 2019. The plan runs for a significant period of time, but within 5 years, we have to review that plan, either a partial review or a whole-scale review of that plan. Now, one of the determining factors in whether you do a partial review or full-scale review is whether your needs for housing or employment have changed significantly since the plan was adopted. We've been doing a Warwickshire-wide housing and employment needs development assessment. That is almost complete, but what we have been waiting for is the ONS figures to be released. Now, as you're aware, those ONS figures have been 6 months delayed. They came out 2 weeks ago. The development strategy team here at the council, along with their counterparts across Warwickshire, are now crunching the numbers to look at what those projections mean for our housing and employment needs. And that will then determine what kind of review we need to have. It will therefore be in the autumn that we will be able to come back to Cabinet with those findings and with our recommendations of what we need to do in terms of a full-scale or a partial review. The reason that's important is because of the timescales. They are completely different timescales for those two plans. So once we've got an agreement about the type of review we're going to do, we can then update the local development scheme, which will then set out the timetable to go through that process. And then I would be able to answer that question about when a policy will be in place. So that's the issue regarding HMOs, and it is really important that it is a focus on a policy. An Article 4 directive would have no impact on this type of development, because all an Article 4 direction would have means is that you've got to apply for planning permission. Well, this scheme already needs planning permission, so it would make absolutely no difference to this type of application. So in terms of parking, the National Planning Policy Framework is quite clear that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or a residual cumulative impact on the road network, or the residual cumulative impact on the road network would be severe. Now, the statutory consultees in the Local Highway Authority do not consider that paragraph 111 of the National Planning Policy Framework is breached in relation to this development. And one of the reasons for that is that it has taken into account its existing use. Its existing use, which whilst may not be in operation, could be brought back into as an office at any time. And therefore, the impact of an office, the traffic generated by that office, has to be taken into account in the determining of this application. The council, in its plan, has policy D2 in relation to parking, and this sets out that that planning permission will only be granted for development incorporating adequate and satisfactory parking facilities, including the provision of motorcycles, cycles and spaces for people with disabilities, and that the standards are set out in Appendix 5. Now, Appendix 5 is quite clear that they are not maximum standards, and neither are they minimum standards, they are a guidance. But it also says quite specifically for HMOs that they are to be determined on an application-by-application basis. So in relation to this application, the County Council, as a statutory highway authority, have considered the application, and they consider that the parking or in some respects, the no car parking is acceptable, and in highway safety terms doesn't breach 111 of the NPPF. That does put members in a very difficult position, because you've heard from the residents about their concerns about on-street car parking on the public highway, and that their concerns that this scheme would make that worse. The problem that you have in terms of your role on the as a local planning authority is that you've got to take into account what is set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, what is set out in our plan, and what the statutory consultee has said in regard to parking, and they don't consider that it meets or it breaches that very high bar in terms of highway safety issues. And therefore, the Office of recommendation in relation to this proposal is one of approval.
Thank you for a very full, helpful and informative response. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that. We've got a number of speakers. First of all, Councillor Sivastava.
Thank you, Chair. There are 4 objections which have been stated. Character and appearance of the area. That's certainly changing very fast. As I've expressed, the people who bought this house, there was a community structure and a friendly community atmosphere. That's certainly changing. And a lot of people are probably considering to move from the area due to these issues. A pressure on community infrastructure in terms of transport, in terms of getting, is certainly there. And we talk about the mess of bins. And I walk around the streets, I see a lot of bins lying on this footpath. And I think this has been said, there is management to control it. Biggest issue is the parking. I know Warwickshire County Council says no objection. What I wonder, what is the evidence they give to us that their judgment, to make the judgment? And this is the question which we have to, this is the one question I think very difficult for me to understand. When I drive through the Bath District, it's full of cars, and I think there are 11 people, only 3 parking spaces as mentioned. I think it's going to be very difficult for the people who live in the area. My comments, I suppose, these are the comments.
Did the officer want to come back?
Was there a question in that? No.
When you're saying there is a lot of pressure and this has not been said.
Councillor, can you put your microphone on? Have you said all you wanted to say? Is that okay?
Question.
All right. We'll move on now. Councillor Lawrence.
Hello. I just think I would like to bring up that at scrutiny on Monday, we discussed in full exactly the same subjects about HMO, parking and things like that. That was a very lengthy conversation, and thank you, Nicola, because you gave us very full and complete answers, as you have again tonight. So I think the subject has been subject to quite a lot of discussion already, and I'm not sure that we're going to move that further forward tonight, given there was such scrutiny given on Monday. So my understanding is that there is no legal reason we can take anything about the recommendation but on as an HMO, because it's not in the town plan that we have anything other than national policy, and on parking it's within agreement of national policy as well. Okay.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Mrs Brown.
Thank you, yes. Just first of all, thanks to Legal Officer for clarifying that it doesn't really matter who lives in this house. It's about other issues. I'm really concerned about the effect that the concentration of HMOs obviously has on the way people can live their lives in the area. I'm really relieved to hear that we're going to get something through. Sort of, I know it seems a while away, but we are going to get something through in the autumn which will make it clearer. Until that happens, we will continue to have this argument and this debate. So my feeling is that this will, however careful people are to park their cars where they do not upset people, they use their permits, whatever it may be, any additional pressure on parking on those streets will cause a problem, and people will have visitors, and they will have people who come to service the flats or whatever it may be. So there is an issue around that. It's not neutral. It can't be neutral. There has to be an impact there. My main worry is what the plethora of HMOs has on the way in which an area operates and develops and the community therein. And I think that probably has been chewed over in here and in other committees ad infinitum, but please let's have something that we can work from that really takes into account all of these issues about overdevelopment of particular areas in our urban wards. We should be looking at urban regeneration, and what we're doing is packing them in. That's my point.
Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker, Councillor Eccleston.
Thank you, Chair. The subject of HMOs has been subjective, should we say, and there's been a lot of views around it. But, you know, we've got to concentrate on this application. And we're hearing a lot about the number of HMO applications within Rugby itself. This application, to me, shows a quality job. By the look of things, it looks like a quality application. It looks like a quality premises. There are varying types of HMOs within our borough, some good, some bad, some with antisocial behaviour, some with littering problems, some without. If we're to believe the applicant, they have some very strict management ideology around their HMOs. I think, personally, this is an excellent development, and I would move to support the officer, and my motion is to approve.
Thanks for that. We've got Councillor Sanderson next.
Thank you, Chair. I think the head of Planning Services has made it abundantly clear that we can't change our policy midstream. It has to be part of a review. And I think that's been told on numerous occasions. Environmental Health have put in no objections to this application. Highways have put in no objections to this application, and we should assess it on its own merits. And at the moment, I haven't heard anything that doesn't support it in its own right and its own term as a development.
Councillor, are you seconding the motion to approve?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, we've got Councillor Daly next.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to support what my colleagues have just said. I was concerned about the impact on parking in this area. However, I think it's been made clear by the Highways Department that they would only willingly offer 3 parking permits for this property. So I think that concern, for me, is sorted by that. So I will be supporting this approval of this application as well.
Thank you for the comments. We're going to have one more speaker, Councillor Mystery, and then we're going to move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. I echo what Councillor Tim Willis just said, you know, and officers knows our views about generally HMO. So I'm not going to debate on that side. I'm going to look at this merit of the suggestion. Nice to know, been highlighted today, that we are very much a developer-friendly council. Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed. I think we need to turn the table around and look at the concern of the residents who live in and the concentration of the HMO. Coming back to this particular HMO, if you look around, I still say it's a commercial area. You got the age-concerned building, which is quite widely used for parking. There is restriction. You got a school run across the road, and then they'll have an impact on the local business. So I find it very strange that what survey has been done to say there is no impact on the parking. And when you talk about 3 permits, who's going to restrict how many cars that particular property, the HMO? I mean, I thought 5 was bad enough, 6 was bad enough, 7 and above, and now I hear 11. There are at least potential of 16 to 17 people that's going to use it. And how are you going to restrict? There's no car parking. So there is an issue on the parking on it and the impact on the local businesses. And on that basis, I'll be voting against.
Okay, we're going to, we've had a proposer and a seconder for approval, and a show of hands for those in favour. And those against? Okay. So that's approved. So the Speaker can leave if she wants to. Get back out into the cool air, 'cause it's quite warm in here. Okay. Right, we're going to move back to item 1 on the applications for consideration, and this time we've got Erica, 32 High Street. This is the one that was deferred from the last meeting.
viability ruling out the Section 106 contributions, it is possible, if members are minded to do so, to ask for a Section 106 obligation, which incorporates a viability review mechanism. And what this does is essentially asks for a viability to be undertaken again later on in the scheme, once all costs are known and the development has been built out, so that if for any reason the scheme is more viable than anticipated at the time of the original viability assessment, then that uplift can be potentially shared between the local planning authority and the developer, and it's possible to potentially have some of the Section 106 obligations that were originally sought but deemed unviable, and that's an option open to members if they wish to pursue it.
We've got Councillor Eccleston first.
Thanks, and it's on the subject of 106. Perhaps you could clarify what tests. Well, it's all very well for the developer saying that it doesn't meet the requirements of 106, so therefore it's not viable. We can't sell our properties, whatever. What tests do we as a council put in place to ensure that is actually correct?
The details, they submit a viability report and it goes out to a specialist who can look at the viability and looks at the tests and the property value and to do a thorough, robust testing on it to see whether they are saying that that's correct or not. And in this instance, the viability consultant came back and said, yes, with that to pay the Section 106 monies or agreements, then it would be unviable.
Thank you. Councillor Sivastava.
In recent fire accident in London, any comment from the fire services, any issues?
No, we haven't, no.
We've got Councillor Willis next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hugely supportive of town centre living. I believe it is the way forward, and with the day job today, another application was brought to my attention. But I am concerned with the issue of parking and how realistic we are being in having zero parking as part of this, or indeed any other application. 13.3 tells us, paragraph 13.3, that yes, the scheme is within walking distance of employees in Rugby Town Centre, bus stops, 20-minute walk from the train station. In the wind and rain, that is going to be difficult to maintain. We're also told that there are car parks nearby for visitors and friends to visit. But I do wonder how those people who choose to live in this scheme cope with, say, the daily or the weekly supermarket shop. I'm also looking at the transport survey. The transport survey tells us 400 metres north of the site, 550 parking spaces and more. So the parking is available. I do wonder why then, as a borough, and I have seen this before, again, with the day job of developing extra care housing in Stratford-upon-Avon, where the local authority has offered season tickets, permits at a reduced price to encourage people to take up the offer of what is an attractive town centre living opportunity. Probably more policy, but again, I think we're going to see more and more of these, so it would be good to hear where we are going as an authority. Thank you.
We've got Nicola to respond.
Thank you. So my back's to you again, Councillor Willis. All of what you said is completely correct. Town centre living, not just in Rugby, but in market towns across the country, does tend to be car-free. This building is completely landlocked. It's not accessed by any public highway. You can't have parking. And we've got to make a choice as an authority. If we want to revitalise our town centre and have a vital and viable high street, it has to be a mix of uses. And bringing residents in, increasing the nighttime economy, all adds to that vitality and viability. There's no displacement in cases like this with parking, indiscriminate parking on the surrounding streets, because it's the town centre and there are no surrounding streets. In terms of parking permits for local car parks for visitors or for residents. That is something that we can look at in the future. But as members of this committee know, we're currently undertaking a town centre strategy. And that is going to be looking at the whole of the town centre. It's going to be looking at parking. It's going to be looking at the car parks that we own. And given the state of flux that we are currently in, I don't think it would be wise to be issuing car parking permits for residents to have a car parking space on a car park that might not be there in a few years' time. Because then that would we would actually have entered into a legal obligation with those residents to do that. But I certainly think as part of the town centre strategy, we need to be looking at that issue in terms of future developments in the town centre. The other thing that I think we need to be considering is the use of car clubs. And the supplementary planning document on Section 106 contributions that is coming to Cabinet on the 1st of August and then would go out to consultation. One of the changes in that is to require major developments to provide car clubs when they are car free or have very few car parking spaces. And what that will do is one way of doing it is that you could require the developer to pay for car club membership for all of the residents for a year. And then that means that they have access to those car clubs to do things like the weekly shop, if they so choose. We would be able to allocate spaces within our car parks that those car clubs could be used. The car clubs are run by independent companies and they're available for all. So if they're in the town centre, they're in one of our car parks, again, they can be used not only by these residents when they book it on the website or by anybody who wants to use those car clubs. So that is also something that we want to be doing. And if that Section 106 SPD is approved, that can be done this autumn. So we very soon would be able to deal with that sort of issue in terms of encouraging town centre living and ensuring that residents have got access to multi-modes of transport, cycle parking, access to the railway station, access to public transport, but also access to a car should they choose to use it. And I hope that answers your question.
Indeed it does. Again, thank you. A very informative and helpful response, so much so that I'm more than happy to move approval for this application, Chair. Thank you.
With the viability review of 106?
Why not? Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. Very much support this application. The original building was back to the 1950s, and perhaps people have a bit of a nostalgic position where Woolworths was concerned. However, life moves on, and this would provide much needed accommodation within the town centre where those new local residents will actually support the town centre. It will be their local shopping parade. So I very much welcome this application in that respect. There's a couple of little niggles I just want to sort out with the officer. Was she aware that there's a traffic regulation order covering the area because it's a pedestrianised area and therefore there is no parking within that locality? And I just wondered why there wasn't an informative attached to this advising the constructor that they can get in before 11, they can get in after 4, but between 11 and 4, it is pedestrianised. That was one that I would like to see put in there so the contractor knows between 11 and 4, their construction vehicles should not be in that space unless they've got some sort of permit from the county council. The other thing was, in terms of the biodiversity, I mean, it mentions bat boxes. Well, if you look at the little cherry trees in Sheep Street, it's not going to happen, is it really? The only places that you could put something like bird boxes and bat boxes would be in, for example, into St Andrew's Gardens, or in the the other green open space on the other side. But it would more likely be St Andrew's Church Gardens, where you would look to put any bat boxes or anything like that in terms of meeting any biodiversity need. But in terms of this development, I want to see people coming back into the town, because people coming back into the town will keep the shops, more likely to keep the shops open than all our wheeling and dealing and wonderful ideas for this, that and the other, because footfall, real footfall, is what keeps businesses open. More than happy to second, yeah.
We've got the officer to come back.
Through you, Chair. Yes, I'm aware that it's a pedestrian area and there is a restriction zone in there. We have put in a construction management plan.
Can you speak up a bit? You're a bit quiet.
Sorry. I am aware that it is pedestrian area and there is a restriction of when the vehicles can move, and it's between 11 and 4, I believe. There is a condition 6, which is the construction management plan, which deals with, which is that they have to submit, which should cover when the details of construction work. They have to, as an informative, that they have to get highways permission for scaffolding. So it is in there. The diversity, we have got some as the condition. We've got the informatives that have been put on by requested by Ecology.
Thanks for that, Erica. We've still got one or two more speakers left. We've got Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, I'd like to probably support my fellow councillors in a number of things they've said. One, in terms of this being a development which is all about renewing the vitality of the town centre, bringing residents back in, and that property has probably not been used fully in more than 20 years. It was in a decline or worse before it went in January, I think it was 1989 or something like that. I can remember using it, 2009. And it happens to be, I believe, 100 years ago that Woolworths came into the town. But anyway, history is history. We need to move on, and I think this is the right sort of development. I certainly will support a review of the viability and looking at that, and reconsideration of parking if we can do that going forward. That seems to be the main issue with this, is the lack of parking, else we cannot do that. In terms of the quality of development, Erica, thank you for the response to that. One of the things I wanted to ensure was this was a property suitable for people with reduced mobility. I understand that the right regulations are in there in the design and accessibility part 3, section 6.1. Thank you, Erica, for pointing that out to me. I notice on that page it has images of BSI standards, so I assume that therefore that's in the conditions that they will be applying those standards. So yes, I will be in support of this development.
We've got Councillor Eccleston.
Yeah, very quickly. Again, I welcome the attraction of residents back into the town centre, and I think that's what the regeneration plan is going to show anyway, that we do want to get more people back into the centre, and I fully support what Councillor Sanderson has says about you know, the viability of the shops, etc. I would make a comment though that although there is restrictions on that, on the parking in that area for vehicles and stuff during the day, it's like a racetrack at night sometimes when they open those gates and people do get to the pubs and stuff and the restaurants around there. But yes, I'll also be supporting this motion.
Eric, we've got any more speakers? Well, just casting my mind back not too many years ago when Corporation Street didn't exist, the main route through the town was up High Street. And that's when you've got all the low loaders with all the jig generators and turbines coming in from AI and GCE all the way up High Street. And as a young boy, almost been crushed to death to get into this shopping at Woolworths. You know, that was they were operated by steam in those days. We're going back. So we've had a proposer and a seconder. We also want to be able to delegate authority to officers for condition of waste management and delegate viability review as well and delegate that to officers. We all happy with that? Let's have a vote. All those in favour, please show. Well, 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 that's unanimous. Well done. Well, we've got Sam next with 208 Dunchurch Road. Thank you for that, Sam. We've got Councillor Eccleston first.
Yep. I think it's a pretty straightforward decision, really, Chair. I think I move for approval.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll second that.
Yes, Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really a point of clarification. Looking at the report, the time of application, Councillor Shearer was still a council member. My understanding is the declaration was made on the 29th of March, 22, validation on the 1st of April, when we would have been in Purda. I do wonder at why resources have been taken up. Sam, you've done a great job with the report, and thank you. And we've seen how it's been welcomed by members. I do wonder, should we be using resources for something actually which would normally have been an officer's decision? We were in Purda when, as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure the councillor status, being fairly new to this, but I do wonder why this has come to committee when we could have had a delegated decision and gone home earlier.
Through you, Chair. So during Purda, a councillor retains their status as a councillor, so it would have been in accordance with the Constitution that we wouldn't able to do this by delegated authority. I don't disagree with the points you're making about resource, but unfortunately that's what our Constitution says.
Thank you. I will be supporting the application.
Thank you. While we have the opportunity, would councillors that want to declare non-pecuniary please do so?
Thank you. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary.
I will do this likewise, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we've had a proposer and a seconder. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. That looks like it's unanimous. Oh, you're not. You're abstaining. Okay. Okay, so we've got one abstention. Is that correct? One abstention. That's
carried.
No, that's carried then. That's approved. Right, moving on down the agenda. Advance notice of site visits. Do we have any?
Yes, we do. There's been a request for a site visit for the land south of Bailey's Lane.
Thank you. That was land down south of Bailey's Lane.
Yeah, it's land south of Bailey's Lane, Long Lawford, and it's application reference R220500.
All those in favour for a site visit, please.
Is there a reason for the site visit?
Concerns raised of overshadowing, overlooking or loss of privacy to neighbouring properties, traffic generation, highway safety, parking issues, design issues, height, bulk, positioning of buildings, appearance effect of surrounding properties. Noise
the answer's no then, Chair.
Effect on existing trees.
We've got it. Are we okay? We're all happy with that site visit then? All right. You sure? Was that a resounding yes? Let's have a show of hands. Come on, a site visit. Well done. Excellent. That's it. Fantastic.
Councillor Poole.
Councillor Poole requested it. Right, we're moving on down the agenda. Delegated decision. Sorry. Moving on down the agenda, delegated decisions.
Sorry.
Okay, I think that concludes the business of the meeting. Can we stop the live stream?